Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. So today we are doing the last four shlokas of chapter 4 of the Bhagavad-Gita, shlokas 39 to 42. And I have titled this Jnana, the sword for self-realization. You'll see why it's titled like this. So we've done now the first 38 shlokas. And in the last shloka, last session, the very last shloka we did was this. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalena atmani vindati. There's nothing as pure as spiritual knowledge. This is what we spoke about, the effect of spiritual knowledge, the happiness it produces, the lack of delusion it causes. One becomes free from delusion caused by his being in the material existence. And it gives him liberation eventually. So there's nothing as pure as jnana. And one who has matured by the practice of yoga, that's why it says, Tat Swayam Yoga Samsiddhaha Kalena Atmani Vindati. So by the patient and persistent practice of Nishkama Karma Yoga over time, one becomes free from all anartha. And because of that freedom from anartha, one experiences this knowledge, but this will take time. It's a prolonging process. It's not something that happens overnight. And that's the reason why one should have complete patience and persistence. One should never give up when one begins this process. Today, we begin with the 39th shloka. It says, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparaha sanyatendriyaha jnanam labdva param shantim achirena adhigacchati. So here, Sri Bhagavan brings in the requirement of Shraddha. He says that when you have to practice this with patience and persistence over time, Shraddha is an essential requirement. So last class also, I remember in one of the discussions we had, we touched upon this point about Shraddha. And in the 17th chapter, I mentioned that in the third shloka, where Sri Bhagavan says, Sattvanurupa sarvasya Shraddha bhavati bharata, Shraddha mayoyam purushaha yo yat Shraddha sa eva saha. Right? Shraddha, or the conviction, is an essential aspect for anything. In particular, when you want to go on the spiritual path, strong Shraddha in that path is required, whichever path you take. So if you're taking the path of Nishkama Karma Yoga, then you should have Shraddha that that path will take you to the goal that you're looking for along that path. In that shloka, which I just cited from the 17th chapter, Sri Bhagavan says that Shraddha is a essential attribute of every living being, regardless of whether they're taking a spiritual path or they are just living in material existence, whatever state or condition they are in, Shraddha is an essential thing. Shraddha is the conviction about life, about anything that we do. Like everybody, if you talk to anyone, what is your goal in life? Okay, some people will say some goal. My goal is to become rich, or my goal is to start a company which will give a lot of employment. My goal is to serve the poor people. Whatever it is, you ask them, why do you do that? Why do you want to pursue that goal? Okay, now, as the answer, you will see that they believe in something. There is some conviction in some principles which are driving them to pursue that goal. There is something, and that is what Sri Bhagavan means by Shraddha. There is something very intrinsic in them, that paradigm, the way they look at this world, which drives them to do whatever they are doing. Exactly in the same way, for a spiritual path, a path that you want to take towards ultimately becoming free from material existence, you have to have the Shraddha that there is something called mukti, there is something called getting out of material existence. Then you have to look for a path, and when you find that path, like Nishkama Karma Yoga, you have to have faith that that path will be able to take you there. Okay, the analogy you can use is if somebody wants to get into IIT, let's say, that's an easy analogy to understand. Then they go join a coaching institute. So if they join the coaching institute, they should have conviction that if I follow whatever the coaching institute tells me to do, and if I learn all the lessons they teach me, then I will be able to get into IIT. If they don't have that conviction, then they will not go anywhere, right? They'll just keep struggling. They'll keep roaming around. They won't be able to study also much. They won't have much motivation. So the Shraddha gives the motivation to do what you are trying to do. So Shraddha or firm conviction in the Shastra. So here it is Shastriya Shraddha. Shastriya Shraddha is contrasted from Laukiki Shraddha. Laukiki Shraddha is the broad term used to refer to the normal Shraddha that most of us have about living in this world, finding happiness through different activities of pleasure or fulfillment, intellectual fulfillment. That kind of Shraddha, or even Shraddha in, let us say, God. Okay. Now, many people will say, I have very deep faith in God. मैं शिव जी का व्रत रखता हूँ, हनुमान जी का पूजा करता हूँ. So this kind of Shraddha, even that is, if it is not backed by Shastra, if it is not based on Shastra, it is called Laukiki Shraddha. It is Shraddha which has come from somebody saying something, you heard something, or some fear. You have some fears which you're trying to mitigate. And out of that fear, out of nothing else, no other way to resolve that fear, somebody may say, आप हनुमान जी के मंदिर जाओ, प्रति सोमवार को जाओ, शनिवार को जाओ, ये करो, वो करो, सब ठीक हो जाएगा. Now you get some upadesh from somebody and you start doing it. Okay? There is some Shraddha there. But that Shraddha is not Shastriya Shraddha. It doesn't come from understanding through Shastra why that should be done, or who is Hanuman, by serving Hanuman in this manner, what will happen. Is there a Shastra statement which describes that process? Such kind of Shraddha, which is generally based on something that we hear and develop some conviction, is called Laukiki Shraddha. But here, Sri Bhagavan says, Shastriya Shraddha. Okay, in the 16th chapter, before he talks about Shraddha in the 17th, the whole 17th chapter of Bhagavad-gita is an analysis of Shraddha. The whole chapter can be just titled as Analysis of Shraddha. And Sri Bhagavan contrasts, Shraddha according to the three gunas of different things that we do. In the 16th chapter, before he closes the 16th chapter, he concludes by saying that one should have very firm Shraddha in the Shastra. And one should do whatever the Shastra asks one to do. One should never trespass the Shastra. One should not go away from it. Okay, so here he's referring to Shastra about the Shraddha about Nishkama Karma Yoga and how it will lead to eventually Chitta Shuddhi and then Jnana. In this shloka, the word Shraddhavan labate jnanam tatparaha sanyatendriyaha. Tatparaha means one who is devotedly following anything, right? Tatparaha. So if one is devoted to, let's say, for example, developing their skill in, say, programming, okay, then you'll see some people sitting day and night, right, writing code or deciphering code, or sitting with a computer and trying to install some new, say, compiler or something. But all the time they are devoted to it. And in the course of that, if they miss a meal or if they miss some appointment with a friend, they won't feel so bad because that's giving them so much fulfillment. They feel so happy doing that. Okay. So that is the meaning of tatpara, one who is devoted to something so strongly that he does not miss other things much. He may barely maintain himself by having something quickly to eat and he'll get back to that. Right? Tatpara. So that's the way one should practice the path of yoga, the Nishkama Karma Yoga. Sanyatendriyaha. So one should practice this with control over their senses. One should not be unregulated. One should be regulated and have complete control. The senses should not dictate to them what to do. They should dictate to the senses what should be done. Parashanti. Okay, so Jnanam Labdha Param Shantim. So one who does all this, what will happen to him? He will obtain Jnana. That Jnana will emerge from inside. The Jnana actually is already present in us. Why is it already present in us? Because that is intrinsic to the Atma. Okay, Bhagavad-gita says that each of us is an Atma. And we have taken this body right now. We are living in this body. So therefore, the Atma naturally has Jnana in it. Jnana is not acquired theoretically from somewhere. Initially, yes, the Shraddha builds through reading the Shastra. In the Shastra, we come to know that there is something called Jnana, that we are the Atma. And the Jnana refers to being, aiming for Mukti. It refers to seeing the body as separate from us. Theoretically, we understand these things and that inspires us to try. But once we actually go through the process and the chitta shuddhi happens, the purification, the removal of anartha happens, eventually that jnana becomes a inner thing. It becomes a realization. It's no longer theoretical in nature. One can actually see that and live in that jnana. And the symptoms of experiencing that jnana, there are many symptoms described. One of the symptoms is the feeling of complete happiness. Sri Bhagavan says in one of the chapters that when that happiness comes, then even the worst of difficulty in this world, even the worst disaster that can happen to somebody will not disturb that person. Because one is intrinsically experiencing an inner sense of happiness. The happiness is burning inside, it's emanating from inside. That even a very bad thing that happens outside, we don't want that to happen. Not that you want such things to happen, but even if that happens, that person is not disturbed. That is what he means by param shanti or parashanti. Okay, in Dvitiya Vibhakti, it becomes param shantim. And he says, achirena adhigacchati. So once the jnana comes, now for the jnana to come, this kalena atmani vindati, the previous shloka. It will take a long time. It's persistence and patience required. But once it comes, then he says, achirena. Achirena means very quickly, immediately. Okay, chiram. Chiram in Sanskrit means a long period of time, a delayed period of time. Achiram means very quickly, without delay. Okay, so achirena adhigacchati. Very quickly he experiences that happiness and supreme peace. Okay, and eventually he gets mukti. When he practices bhakti, he says, Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. In that state of pure jnana, one gets inspired to practice bhakti, and that bhakti practice ultimately gives them mukti as well. Agyascha ashaddhadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na paro na sukham samshayatmanaha. So here, this shloka contrasts with the previous shloka. In the previous shloka, he said one who followed the process strictly with Shraddha and did everything, experienced all that. Now, what if one doesn't have that Shraddha and he decides to remain ignorant? Okay, so agyaha. The first word is agyaha, means one who is ignorant. Like most people in this world, we are also in that stage. We are just coming to know that there is something like this. So we are also largely in the stage of ignorance. Ashraddhadhanascha, one who doesn't have Shraddha. So agyaha, and he chooses to remain like that. Samshayatma. Samshayatma means one who is doubtful. Okay, I'll tell you in more detail what Samshayatma means. Such a person, vinashyati, he is destroyed. Destroyed means that he just lives and he is born again. His body gets destroyed in due course of time. Death has to come to everybody. Death does not spare anyone. And eventually, he takes another birth. After death, he just takes another birth. That's what is meant by vinashyati. And typically what happens in the absence of knowledge, it leads one to commit pap. Right? One is driven by the senses. And when the senses are driving somebody, they eventually end up committing things which go against the Shastra. When it goes against the Shastra, it earns a negative reaction to them. It binds them further in this world in the form of pap. And when that happens, one takes lower births in future. So if one is in a certain type of birth now, then by virtue of accumulating pap in the next life or the next to next life, one gets even lesser birth by which one has to suffer more or experience more challenging situations, whereby it becomes even more difficult to come to spiritual knowledge. So he says, Nayam lokostina paro na sukham samshayatman. So for such a person, neither is there happiness in this life. Na ayam loka means his current existence, the way he is living now. Na paraha means in a future life. Neither in this life nor in a future life, he will experience sukha. The sukha that he's talking about, the sukha of Brahma, realization of Jnana, Brahma or Bhagavan, that sukha will never come to such a person. So he's again emphasizing the importance of Shraddha. Okay, Agyaha means one who is ignorant of the knowledge of Shastra like an animal. This is from the commentary of Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan and Shivishna Chakravarti also. He says, they both say that, just like in Hitopadesha, I cite this shloka often, it's a very popular shloka, that Ahara Nidra Bhayamaithunam cha Samanametat Pashubhir Naranam Dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesho dharmena hinaha pashubhis samana. Very, very beautifully composed shloka, which has 4 parts like any shloka. The first part he says, Ahara nidra bhaya maitunam cha. Okay, 4 things. Ahara means eating, nidra sleeping, bhaya means fear, feeling fear and insecure, feeling insecurity, bhaya. And maitunam is sex life, okay, sexual pleasure. So these 4 things, samanam etat pashubhihi narana. So the animals and human beings all experience these 4 things. These are common. So samanam means they're equal. On these 4 dimensions, animals and human beings are equal. And then he says, dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesham. So for the human beings alone, there's something called as dharma, that is adhiko vishesha. That's an additional thing that they can do, which animals don't do. Right? So human beings have a vivek with which they can discriminate that this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do. Animals are driven just by instinct. Right? If there is food, they'll go and have food. If they see an opposite gender, they will go and do that. So they are driven by their instincts. There is no thinking for them. Whereas human beings are capable of thinking and asking the question, is this right? Is this wrong? Does Shastra approve this? Does Shastra reject this? What is meant by Shastra? Even that question comes to a human being only. So, samanam etat pashubhir naranam dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesho, then he concludes by saying, dharmena hinaha pashubhir samana. So therefore, logically speaking, if there is no dharma in some human being, he is as good as an animal. There is no difference between that person and animal. He is living an animal's life. And so whatever animals experience, he will also experience. So here the word agyaha is a person who is like an animal, does not have any knowledge of the Shastra. So ashraddha and samshayatma. So one who knows what Shastra says, but he is not able to get conviction in Shastra because he sees multiple people debating on the Shastra. I've seen a lot of people like this. In fact, when I began this journey, I too went through a period of time when, seeing people presenting different views, you don't know which view to take. He also looks correct. This also looks correct. So then Shraddha doesn't develop because all of them seem to be correct in whatever they are saying. The way they are putting it, it seems correct, logically correct. So then how do I decide which one is correct for me? Okay, this is a very difficult question to answer. So this is one reason why somebody remains a Samshayatma even if they know what is Shastra. Okay. The second type of Samshaya is this, B. One who knows and accepts what Shastra says. So he agrees that, okay, I'll follow the path of Bhakti Yoga because now I have understood that Bhakti is the supreme path and it's the path for Kali Yoga. I've gone through all the debates and everything. And maybe some people don't even need the debate. They've just come to Bhakti and they understood and they accept also. But then he's not able to develop the strength inside to say that I'll be able to do it. Okay. It is something like, again, using the IIT analogy, because it's easy to understand. I use this again and again. Let's say that all your classmates are preparing for IIT and they're working hard. But you will find some people who will say that, ये हमसे नहीं होगा. हम तो सिर्फ अपने बोर्ड एग्जाम में ही फोकस करेंगे. उसमें अच्छा नंबर लाएंगे. तो किसी न किसी अच्छे कॉलेज में हमको सीट मिल जाएगा. IIT छोड़ दो. Right? You see people like that. When I was preparing also, there were people like this. So even though they accept that, yes, if I go through the training program with FITG or whichever institute, I'll be able to make it. And these people, my classmates, many of them will make it. But they themselves, even though they can potentially, but they're not able to get the conviction that they'll be able to do it. Their conviction in themselves, they doubt themselves. Okay, so samshaya has all these meanings. So therefore, such a samshayatma, person who's not able to get the conviction that he can do it. Okay. In fact, Shastra in the Upanishad it says, Nayam Atma Balahine Labhyate. Bala or strength, okay, inner strength, is considered an essential ingredient for doing sadhana, spiritual sadhana. One should be able to say that I have the strength to make the sacrifices required. I have the strength, and this is even required for PhD. Today, Saroj came to my room, and he has completed his PhD in how many? 2010 to today, 13 years now, right? And for a long time, he was not able to focus much because of distractions, family. He's having a family, he's got a job, and he's in a senior position in the company. But in the last 1 year, he worked extraordinarily hard. sacrificed so much of his time. He used to be here on the campus all the time. Fortunately, his company is very nearby. His office is very nearby, Tata Steel. It's 2-3 kilometers. So he used to come here in the morning, stay here, and occasionally go to the office and again come back. He used to do all his work on the phone, get orders done. So he developed that conviction suddenly that I can do it. I will do it. I'll finish my PhD come what may, but I will make sure it happens. So even for doing your PhD, that conviction is essential. That it looks in the beginning, you're not able to make sense of what this is all about. Reading papers, so many things are being said. There's nothing makes sense. But then if you don't have the conviction in you that you can actually figure it out, because others also have done it in the past, I can also do it. That conviction is not there, you will not be able to do it. So first develop that conviction and then you will be able to definitely do it. Okay, so this here Sri Bhagavan says that if you don't have that conviction, that Shraddha, and you remain a Samshayatma, then both this life and your next life will continue to be miserable, and you will never get that sukha which the person who is sincerely doing it will be able to experience. Yeah. So Nilesh has also posted a very nice shloka. Esham na vidya na tapo na danam, jnanam na shilam na guno da dharma. Te martyaloke bhuvibhara bhutaha manushya rupena mrigascharanti. Very nice. Yes. Yoga sanyasta karmanam, jnana sanchinna samshayam, atmavantam na karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya. So he says here, coming out of the comparison of Shraddha of two types of people, he's now going to conclude the 4th chapter. So he says, summing it all up, yoga sanyasta karmanam. So one eventually, as one progresses through the path of Nishkama Karma Yoga, one Chitta Shuddhi happens. And then one is able to say that by all these things, I am now able to, focus my mind and contemplate on that self, on myself as different from the body, and on that supreme Brahman, which is God, Shri Bhagavan. So I can completely devote, I can sit, I don't need to do my karma anymore. Okay, he reaches that stage when the obligation to do karma is he's beyond that stage. He's no longer obliged to do that karma. By not doing the karma, he is no longer bound. He doesn't get pap. Okay, so yoga sanyasta karmanam, one who is able to do sannyas of the karma by virtue of his maturity in the path of yoga, and jnana sanchinna samshayam. So even after starting the path, there may be some doubts in the heart still left. There may be some anarthas which are still causing some doubts, some fears. Okay, even though largely they are gone, they're still there. But here it says jnana sanchinna samshaya. Once that knowledge starts emerging, all those remaining doubts also are destroyed. There is no more doubt. Atmavantam na karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya. For such a person who is atmavanta, means atmavan. Atmavan in Dvitiya Vibhakti becomes atmavantam. So that atmavan, for him, his karmani na nibadnanti. He's doing activity because he has to even at least take care of his body, but there is no longer any pap or punya for that. Okay, pap and punya, he has crossed beyond that. Only if there is punya papa, then there is nibadnanti. Nibadnanti means binds. There is binding that happens. Binding means you are bound to this world and you will take birth again and again. That will not happen to such a person. Na karmani nibadnanti o dhananjaya. I'll just do one more shloka and come back to that. So touching upon these points. So this he's talking about the Shraddhavan, which was 2 shlokas back, and he has attained the stage of Naishkarmya. I've explained to you before what Naishkarmya means, a stage where he's no longer obliged to do that karma. And Jnana Sanchinna Samshayam, I just explained. Yes, Nibadnanti by. Right. So this is the translation. So concluding the 4th chapter is this. Tasmad, he says, therefore, Ajnana Sambhutam Vritstam Jnanasinatmanaha Chitva Enam Samshayam Yogam Atishta Uttishta Bharata. He says, therefore, Ajnana Sambhutam Vritstam, the what do you call, the impurities in the heart, like kama, krodha, and all the doubts that you have, whether you can do it or not, all these kind of doubts, all the anarthas, unwanted, undesirable things, vritstam, they are situated in the heart, and they are ajnana sambhutam. They come because of ajnana, avidya, ajnana. And what should you do? Jnana asina. Asinam means a sword. Asinam in Sanskrit means sword. Jnana asina atmanaha. The knowledge of the self with that sword, the sword called as knowledge. Chitva means cutting it. What should you cut? Samshaya. All the doubts you must cut. And yoga matishta. Accept the path of Nishkama Karma Yoga. Atishta means accept it, embrace it, make it a part of you. Okay, Yoga Matishta and Uttishta. And now stand up, because Arjuna is sitting there on the chariot saying, I won't fight. Please stand up. Uttishta Bharata means stand up and start fighting. You come here for doing that. Okay. So he instructs Arjuna. So every now and then you will see Sri Bhagavan in the Gita again saying that, get up, Uttishta, put up and stand and start fighting. But till the 18th chapter, Arjuna will not get up. He keeps sitting down and keeps asking down, because he remains a Samshayatma in the Gita till the end. And finally, Krishna says, I have told you everything. There's nothing more I have to tell you. Right? You do whatever you like. You know that shloka? He says, Yatha ichchasi tatha kuru. Yatha ichchasi tatha kuru. Whatever you want, you do now. Sri Bhagavan gives up on him. He says, I've given you everything that I can give you now. I've told you about karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, dhyana yoga also in between. Now I can't do anything more. You decide what to do. And then Sri Arjuna also realizes that there's no point asking further questions. So he says, okay, all my doubts are gone. He's not 100% honest in saying that. He says, now all my doubts are gone, because he sees how Krishna has so patiently spent so many hundreds of shlokas describing this to him. And then he gets up and starts fighting. So, in conclusion of the 4th chapter, from the commentaries that I study, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary is called Sarartha Varshini. And in this, he concludes with this shloka. He says, Ukteshu muktyupayeshu jnanamatra prashasyate jnanopayam tu karmaiva iti adhyayartho nirupitaha. He says, among all the different paths of mukti, here in this 4th chapter, jnanam prashasyate is made predominant or is highlighted. Prashasyate, or shown to be very important. Jnanopayam tu karmaiva. However, the upaya, the process for attaining jnana is karma eva. Means only through nishkama karma. Means that without doing nishkama karma, one should not assume that they already have this knowledge. Just by hearing the Gita, you should not think that now I know everything, I will leave all my duties and go and sit somewhere and start meditating. No. It says jnanopayam tu karmaiva. Only by doing your prescribed duties with all the instructions I have given you, with anasakti and with Bhagavad-arpanam. Only in that way you should do, and only then you will get real jnana. And this is the adhyayartha nirupitaha. This is the conclusion of the 4th chapter. Iti sarartha varshinyam harshinyam bhakta chetasam gitasu ayam chaturtohi sangataha satam. He says, in this manner, in my Sarartha Varshini commentary, which gives pleasure to the bhaktas, to the hearts of the bhaktas, the 4th chapter, Gitasu ayam chaturtohi, the 4th chapter of the Gita, I have completed. Sangataha satam means in accordance with the opinions of the saintly people. So just like in our PhD, what do? We do literature review, and we study what the earlier scholars have said. So there is in our tradition also, when somebody writes a commentary or somebody studies something, they study what earlier scholars did. They take their opinions and their inputs to their writings, and then they form their commentary. Okay, so Vishwanath Chakravarti, in the beginning of his Gita commentary also, he writes a shloka where he says that I have carefully studied the commentaries of the earlier saints, and with their blessings, with the interest of tasting the sweetness of Gita, this insignificant person is writing this commentary on the Gita. He begins like that. This is Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti's conclusion. And Sri Baladev Vidyabhushana, he says like this at the end of the 4th chapter. He says, Dvyamshakam dhanyavat karma tusham shadiva tandulaha shreshtam dravyamshato jnanam iti turyasya nirnaya. So he says that this karma yoga, this path, like I have been calling this karma jnana yoga, right? I've been telling you that karma yoga and jnana yoga are actually one path with just 2 aspects, and that's why the same path has got 2 names. So he's now pointing to that. He's saying that dvamshakam, there are two aspects in this path. Dhanyavat karma. So it's like dhanya. Dhanya means grain in general, grains in general, but here it's referring to rice. So rice has two things in it. One is the rice grain inside, the white color rice grain, and outside is the husk. And then there's the bran, husk, bran, and then the rice itself. Okay, so if you can eat rice with the bran, or you can eat it with it, but you won't eat it with the husk anyway. You have to remove the husk, right? So tusha means husk of the rice. Tusham shadiva tandulaha. Sreshtam dravyamshataho jnanam. So in the path of karma also, karma yoga, karma itself is not the end of this path. Some people say that you do all your karma, but that is fine. You do your karma with the intention that one day you will be able to give up the karma. So when you harvest the rice, you take everything, but you know clearly that you will remove the husk. The husk has to be thrown out. So that karma actually is like the husk, and the rice is the jnana. That's what you want. So dravyamshataha. Dravyamsha is the karma yoga portion. Jnanam. Jnanam refers to the jnana yoga portion, the eventual part, the realization of knowledge. Sreshtam dravyamshato jnanam iti turyasya nirnayam. The fourth chapter is showing us that the karma aspect of this path is something that is to be done initially. After one becomes purified, that no longer has significance. One can then continue to do it for lokas sangraha, or one can give it up. It has no longer a role, but then one should then meditate on jnana. That is the conclusion of the fourth chapter. So I will stop with this for now. And what is your doubt, Sarthak?
So in the previous second last shloka, there was a word Atmavan. So I wanted to know what exactly does that mean, and is it the same as Nirashraya?
It will be very similar, because Atmavan here refers to one who has realized the self. So one who has realized the self, one who can clearly see that the self is not the body. And this happens over time through the practice of yoga and all the different sacrifices you make through in the course of practicing yoga. One simple example I'll give you is the vrata we are holding. For example, many of you observed Shivaratri yesterday by doing upavas. You didn't have your normal food. Maybe some people fasted without water also, nirjala, right? Anybody did nirjala? Nirjala, you did? Nothing after that. No water also, right? Harshit, no? Rakshit, sorry, I'm sorry. With water, right? So in the path of yoga, whether it's karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, there is fasting. So why do we do fasting? What happens when we do fasting on a spiritual path? What is the intention? Now, the key intention is to develop that detachment from the body, because as you do fasting, you realize that I can be happy, or I can feel fulfilled and do a lot of my normal work without food. I don't really require that food. In a normal condition, by default condition in material existence, food is a source of pleasure, right? We don't only see food as nutrition. Very few people actually eat food only for nutrition. A lot of people by default, all of us also, by default, when we think of food, we think of food as a source of pleasure, right? It gives us that the taste. We look for the taste in the food. We look for the texture. We look for the color. We look for the kind of hedonic pleasure we get from food. Now, when you do upavas, when you do fasting sincerely, the practice is to detach from the body. Okay, so that was a deviation from answering your question. But the point is, ultimately, by doing all of these things, the person develops that deep internal realization that I am not this body. And then he becomes an Atmavan. Such a person is an Atmavan. He can then contemplate on himself or on that Brahman, okay, as himself as a part of that Brahman, and continuously feel happiness without depending on anything material. That is the perfection of being Atmavan.
Atmavan means the realized being, that who knows that self is not.
Yeah, who actually has realized it, who can feel it, who can internally feel it without having to depend on a theoretical statement. He doesn't have to remind himself. Like, for example, we may, as sadhakas, we may have to remind ourselves when we get up in the morning. See, you're doing sadhana, you should get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because you're not the body. You have to realize that you're the body. But this person who has already reached the sadhya stage, It's called sadhya, means he has attained that goal. He has realized it. Okay? He's an Atmavan. Yes, nirashraya. So this ashrayatvam, looking for a shelter, the feeling that I need, emotional shelter, psychological shelter, physical shelter. All the inner cravings for that shelter goes away from that person. Such a person is a nirashraya. So an Atmavan naturally becomes a nirashraya also. Yeah, Raksha.
We spoke about conviction in 39 topics. What's the source of conviction? Sometimes the conviction that we have about things, it just generates on its own. We don't know how and where. Is it through your inner desires, or is it through parishram, or how do you really find that sort of conviction?
Yeah, so Shraddha develops owing to the experiences that we have had over time, the association that we have with different people, the experiences we have had over lifetimes. Right from birth, the Jivatma comes with some Shraddha into this world. And as it grows through from a baby stage to an adult, its Shraddha keeps evolving. So there is some basic Shraddha, some basic paradigm, which we see is different in different living beings, different human beings also. But it evolves with experiences, exposure, association with Sangha. And that is why Satsanga, Sadhu Sangha is strongly advised, because through Sadhu Sangha, we develop a particular kind of Shraddha. And then it comes. Now, in the path of Bhakti alone, now this is the general Shraddha for Shastra in any Shastric path. But in the path of Bhakti, Kevala Bhakti, it is clearly said that the Shraddha also is given by Bhagavan with the, through a Bhakta. So Shraddha comes because of Kripa, the Kripa of a Bhakta. And that kind of Shraddha is very rare. That one says that I want to go to Bhagavan, I want Bhagavan in my life. I am his, I belong to him, he belongs to me. That Shraddha is very rare. And it's also rare because it appears a little too simple. It appears simplistic. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga appear a little sophisticated in comparison, because there seems to be, concepts like anasakti and this and that. But in Bhakti, you simply say that you do bhajan. Bhajan means seva. Seva karo, seva karne se sab ho jata hai. It looks too simple and easy. Will it really work? So that Shraddha is not easy to get. But yes.
Shraddha in the context of day-to-day life and activities. So, suppose you're in a group of people, and then some people are doing something, but let's say seeds of conviction are not there within you, and you're just trying to do what they're doing without that sort of Shraddha. Can you build that Shraddha from scratch, or is it that we all come with our own set of, let's say, these seeds of Shraddha which we can, grow, and there are certain areas where our conviction will never perhaps grow?
Yeah, I mean, in my understanding of Shraddha, in most cases, Shraddha develops naturally by virtue of association, or by virtue of, sometimes by accident. You come across something that you never saw before. You develop an attraction towards it, and you see that that could be the source of fulfillment for me. And then you develop a Shraddha in that. You want to pursue it. So Shraddha is the conviction which makes you think that if I pursue that, I will be fulfilled. I'll become happy. This is the conviction. So this Shraddha develops. You may not start by saying, okay, let me now look for Shraddha. You develop Shraddha somehow, and then you look for something which is driven by that Shraddha. Isn't it? Isn't that the way it is? In most cases, I think it is like that.
Yeah. Organically.
Yeah.
Organically, I think
it is somewhat organic. Yes, it is somewhat organic. That is, you don't try to program a Shraddha into yourself. You develop some Shraddha, and then as you start pursuing it, that Shraddha either matures or it's wiped out. because of seeing that what you were doing was wrong. Then the Shraddha is removed, it goes away, and then you look for something else, and the Shraddha then develops. So now a person without Shraddha in anything is a lost person. Sometimes you will see people who are aimless or directionless. They don't know really what to do because they don't have a Shraddha in anything. Right? And including the Shraddha that Shri Bhagavan is saying that in their own self, they don't have the conviction that they'll be able to do anything useful. Anything that they start doing, they begin by doubting that, will I be able to really complete it? Because all the things I did in the past, I have failed. I've only gone 10%, 25% of the way, and I dropped it. Now, when this new thing I'm taking up, will I really persist? Will I be able to do it? I don't think I'll be able to do it. So no Shraddha. So in such cases, you'll see that people are living, they're dragging their life. They just are being dragged in life. Either they are dragging it or they are being dragged by somebody, the circumstances around them. Just living through life, waiting for whatever will happen. So that's a miserable condition of life with no Shraddha. Isn't it? Is it true? Yeah. So therefore, one should have Shraddha in something at least to be happy, even to get the material happiness that this world can give us. But even without spiritual knowledge, if somebody wants to be materially happy also, they should have some Shraddha in something concrete, which will take them in that path. And they should stick with that Shraddha. They should persist until it becomes impossible. Right? If they persist, they will get it. And there are people who do that. They are successful in their professions. There are many people who may not have a spiritual Shraddha, but they are happy in whatever they have done. And they look back on their life and they say, I stood by this, I stuck to it. And that Shraddha carried them through it, right? Yeah.
It's similar to something like a goal setting theory kind of thing. You motivate yourself by setting that goal, then assuring yourself that you can achieve it.
Yes, you back yourself and you have the conviction. Otherwise, you can't really back yourself. No? You may be able to say that externally to others, but internally it's not there. And if it's not there internally, then how long will you drive yourself? Where will the energy come from? Energy comes from that conviction inside, isn't it?
But don't you think that don't you think that spiritual conviction to get the peace of mind, like there are many Steve Jobs, all those people, they had their conviction in their professional lives, the very highest level. But at one stage of life, they needed that spiritual awakening when they were at certain stages in their life. So that spiritual conviction is also required at one point of time in your life to actually attain the peace of mind or to attain a good and happy life afterward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do think that. That's why I'm sitting here. But why do you think that spiritual aspect is required in life? Pooja, what is your understanding?
I feel like that makes me complete. I mean, for me, spirituality makes me who I am. Without my own devotion toward my Bhagwan-ji, I'll not be myself. This is what makes me what I am.
Right. You feel that.
Yeah.
That it comes from an inner feeling. What you described is a feeling that you have inside. It is not something that you have logically derived.
Yeah, I don't find logic in spirituality.
Right.
I know my culture is all completely scientific, so I don't doubt anything.
You don't doubt it.
I don't question why is it so, why not this, why this.
Right.
This is no whatever is being taught by my Shastra, I'll accept it.
Right.
I don't question or doubt.
Right. So this is a form of Shraddha, right? It's there naturally in you. There is no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And you follow it. Yeah. So fundamentally, why is it? Well, fundamentally, why is it that even the most successful materialistic person, a person who is in the normal material world, they will not experience complete happiness without the spiritual, without involvement in spiritual activity. Why do you think that is? That's what you said just now, right?
Yeah.
So think back to what we have been discussing. In earlier class also, I gave the story of the bird in the cage. The king who caught a beautiful bird and put it in a cage because he wanted to make it more happy. Right? Then what happened to that bird?
She was not happy.
Was not happy in the bird. Yeah. Yeah. So why was the bird not happy?
Because that was not her nature.
Natural thing. It was not the natural environment, right? So you put something in its out of its natural state, it will not be happy. So what is our natural state according to the Gita? We are the Atma in the body, right? And if we don't look for the happiness that is intrinsically available to us within ourselves, instead we think that this body and the attributes of this body, the connections of this body are the source of our happiness. Naturally, we will not be happy, right? Because we are missing the main point. The main element, which is the source of our happiness, we are looking away from that. We are looking into things which are not the source of happiness. And there are many logics given to this, why actually happiness is not in that thing. Okay, now for example, let's say I like gulab jamun. Let's say I'm giving a simple, easy to understand example. And you bring gulab jamun to me. Okay, go to Urai. There's a place called Urai. By the way, I'll take a small deviation. Urai is in between Kanpur and Jhansi. Okay, a small village. You know about it?
We used to take a train from Bangalore to, I think, Lucknow, I think.
Mhm.
Buddha used to follow us, be on the way, and
Mm.
we stop by, the train stop by, and we pre-order the gulab jamun.
Wow.
We didn't stop only for 5 minutes, so they come and give it to us through the window. And
So when I was studying, yeah, very similar, exactly. Even at that time, I think it's been there for God knows how long. I guess it's there today also.
So we shall not assume this. Actually, you like those gulab jamun.
Right? Yeah, I used to love it. And like gulab jamun, it's not like the gulab jamun we got in the mess. We used to get in our hostel mess also once in a week or something, one gulab jamun, a small gulab jamun be given in the plate, and we used to have it. This gulab jamun used to be this big, used to be like so big. And at that time, the gulab jamun in the mess used to, I mean, if you buy it in the canteen, you get it for 50 paisa or 1 rupee. This Urai gulab jamun was available for 3 rupees, which is much more than the price of that other gulab jamun. It's because it was supremely delicious. It was exotic. And we used to all tumble out of the train, not get down from the train. We tumble out. People used to just fall out of the train when the train comes to Urai. And again, like you said, it will stop for only 5 minutes or so. And the gulab jamun carts will all be there. And people just furiously buy, 3 rupees, just furiously buy, and all get in again, tumble into the train before it leaves. So now imagine that gulab jamun is given to us and it gives so much pleasure. Okay. All right. Okay. Now let me conduct this thought experiment. Okay. The thought experiment is like this. I'll tell you that today's lunch, I'll give you 3 gulab jamuns from Urai gulab jamuns. Okay. And nothing else. There won't be your normal roti, dal, sabji, none of those things. Only 3 gulab jamuns will be for lunch. Okay. Now you love gulab jamun, so you will embrace the idea because you see so much happiness in that gulab jamun. Okay. Okay. Now this is the first trial of the experiment. In the second trial, I'll say I'll do the same for the dinner also. Okay. You say, wow, is it really true? Am I dreaming or what? Yeah, good. Second trial also you had. But then second time you have it, it won't really give you something additional than what you had in the first time. You had 3 in the afternoon and again you're having 3. It will probably taste similar. Nothing new, you're sort of getting used to it. Now I'll conduct the experiment and say, you enjoyed gulab jamun, no? Yes. So now, the next 1 week, 3 times a day, for breakfast you will have only gulab jamun. I'll give you as many as you want. You can have 5 also. For lunch, only gulab jamun. And for dinner, only gulab jamun. Now let's do it 1 week. Okay. Okay. Now let's come to the assumption that the gulab jamun is a source of happiness. If gulab jamun is a source of happiness, then the more you multiply, the more happiness should increase. Right? Simple logic. Because that's the source of happiness. Happiness is not in me. It's not inside me. It's coming from the gulab jamun. Therefore, the more gulab jamun I insert into my body can digest it. I don't have a problem digesting 3 gulab jamuns if you don't give me any other food. Right? Anybody can. Nothing, no superhuman feat is required there. So then what's the problem? I only want happiness. Gulab jamun gives me happiness. So let me have it. Now what will happen? Will that person be able to sustain it? Will anybody, a normal person, will they be able to sustain that much quantity of gulab jamun and no other food? Naturally, you can see in your own thought experiment, by virtue of your own experience, that it will start sustainable. Right? After some time, it will become a punishment. So what are you doing? You're torturing me. It's like a prisoner. No, but I'm giving you what you love. No, I don't want gulab jamun anymore. Take it out. Okay. Now, this is just an experiment, thought experiment, to illustrate that the happiness actually was not there. It was never there in the first place. Even in the first time you had gulab jamun, the happiness was not in the gulab jamun, it was in the self. But because of Maya, that self is projecting, आरोप करता है, हिंदी में से आरोप. तो गुलाब जामुन पर आरोप कर दिया, उस सुख का जो आश्रय है उस पर डाल दिया. सुख आत्मा का आश्रय होता है, आत्मा के अंदर ही है. But we do the arop on the gulab jamun and think it is coming from there. It's actually inside here, right? And so another example is given for this. That's the example of a camel chewing cactus in the desert because there's nothing else. It finds cactus, so it goes and eats cactus. Now, when it eats cactus, the thorns in the cactus, they cut the tongue of the camel, and the tongue bleeds. And when the tongue is bleeding, the camel tastes its own blood. And the blood, because it's salty in nature, just like we taste, suppose I cut my mouth and some blood goes inside, then I taste my blood, right? And it's not bitter or anything. It is something, it is some taste, it goes inside. I don't vomit or something like that, just because some bit of my blood went into my mouth. The camel tastes its own blood, the blood mixes with the cactus and the saliva, the camel saliva and everything goes inside. And the camel thinks this cactus is so tasty. It's actually tasting its own blood. In exactly the same way, the Atma, the self, he tastes his own happiness through something that is not having any happiness in it. He tastes that external object and thinks that the happiness is coming from that object. This is Vedanta philosophy. Happiness is inside. It's Maya which makes it look like the happiness is coming from there. And that is the purpose of yoga. The purpose of yoga, by its various practices of meditation, fasting, etc., 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 is to help us to detach ourselves from that external thing as the source of happiness and realize that actually it is inside only. And that is the Shraddha. So Shraddha goes from thinking Gulab Jamun is the source of happiness to I am the source of my own happiness. And Sri Bhagavan in Bhakti. When you come to the path of Bhakti, then you realize actually that source of happiness is that Bhagavan. It is from him. And that's the happiness of Prema. Prema is not present in us by default. Prema is present in Bhagavan. And through the path of Bhakti, that Prema comes to us. And that Prema's happiness is far superior to the default happiness that we experience within ourselves. That is Premananda. Well, I'll talk more about that as we go forward.
This example of the gulab jamun can be extrapolated to also companionship. We always try to seek happiness by being around people and things like that.
Yeah.
And when things don't go well, we find it as a source, let's say, an outlet for us to say that, okay, this is the reason why I'm not happy.
Yes. And we blame the other person.
Blame the other person. Whereas the dissatisfaction is from within.
Yes. So because we falsely attributed the happiness to that person's presence in our life, we became dependent. And then when that thing doesn't come, that person leaves our life, whatever means, then we either blame that person or we regret, we lament over the departure of that person. And so that unhappiness comes because we did not realize that actually that happiness was coming from inside only. That is why in yoga you become nirashraya, because you don't need anybody else for your happiness. And you become the source of happiness for others. When others come to you, they see you being so happy, and then they start feeling happy in your presence. This is why we feel happy when we meet a saintly person, a genuinely saintly person. We want to hang around that person and we want to know more and things like that. So today I was reading the Bhagavatam, the very nice description of what happened after the Kurukshetra war. This is in the Pratama Skanda of Bhagavatam, I think in the 7th or 8th chapter. There, after the war was over and the last person, Duryodhana, was killed by Bhima, right? So then these people were sleeping in the camp, and Ashwatthama, he was still alive. He had not been killed in the war.
Now also he's alive, right?
Now also he is alive. So Ashwatthama, he comes to the camp where the Pandavas are sleeping, and he enters the place. He wants to kill the Pandavas actually, but he enters the place where the sons are sleeping. The Pandavas' sons, the 5 sons of the 5 Pandavas through Draupadi, those 5. So each of the Pandavas had one son through Draupadi, and their names are there: Shuddhakirti, Shuddhakarma, something. The 5 names are there. So he sees them and he thinks that they are the Pandavas, and he kills all of them when they're sleeping. He kills and then he goes away from there. So as he goes away, he starts feeling guilty. He knows that he has done wrong. It's obviously wrong. You're not supposed to kill somebody who's sleeping, especially in those times. Today it's considered as normal, but in those times, dharma, according to the principles of dharma, you don't kill anybody, or you don't, even harm anybody when they are. There are many conditions: when they are inattentive, or when they are old, or when they are sick, or and so on. There are many conditions like that. And similarly, without a weapon, and a woman, you don't attack a woman. There's so many conditions, and so he has broken all of them. He's caught hold of people who are peacefully sleeping. They have not done anything, and he's killed them. So he goes away, and when he is going away, he is feeling guilty also. So he suspects that very soon, they will come behind me. So he starts moving. And after some time, it's discovered here. And when they discover it, the Pandavas are shocked by the atrocity of the act, and they know who has done it. They're able to figure out who has done it. So so Arjuna goes to Draupadi and he tells her, Draupadi is weeping very, very badly. She's feeling so miserable, and she's also in a state of shock that her most dear sons were killed. And so she's weeping, she's lamenting. And so seeing that, Arjuna goes to her and says, I will catch that scoundrel right away, and I'll bring him to you. I'll tie him up and bring him to you. I'll chop off his head, and you will stand on him, on that chopped off head, and you will take your bath after performing the last rites of your sons. Perform the last rites, and you take your bath by standing on the head of this scoundrel. I will bring his head to you right now. So he goes. He takes his chariot, goes to Krishna, and Krishna is the charioteer. So Krishna and he immediately start chasing. Krishna is present when he makes this promise to Draupadi, and Krishna is driving the chariot and going. And as they are going, after some time, Ashwatthama can sense somebody is behind me, and he looks behind and he sees in the distance Krishna and Arjuna coming, and he becomes desperate. Already he knows that he has done wrong, and he doesn't know how to get out of that wrong. He doesn't know what to do, and his mind is spinning. And now he sees them fast catching up on him. So he, out of panic, he invokes the Brahmastra. So he has learned how to dispatch a Brahmastra. But he has not learned the second part, part 2. Part 2 is to retract it. He knows only part 1. But out of desperation, he dispatches the Brahmastra towards Arjuna. Arjuna sees the Brahmastra coming. It's coming very fast and it's causing heat. Okay? And he turns to Krishna immediately. He says, what should I do? I mean, this Brahmastra is now coming towards me. It's intending to kill me. Please advise me what I should do. So Shri Bhagavan just says, look, you are trained in all the astras. You know everything. There's nothing you don't know. The best thing to do now is to dispatch a Brahmastra yourself to counter that one and retract both of them. And Arjuna immediately bows down to Krishna. He says, I'll do exactly what you say. Does his Achaman and dispatches a Brahmastra which counters that one and retracts both of them. Both of them are brought back. And the next moment, he pounces on Ashwatthama, catches him and ties him up. He ties him up and puts him on the floor of the chariot. He says, now I'm going to treat you with what you require. And at that point, Sri Bhagavan tells him that this scoundrel has finally been caught, and finish him off, just chop off his head. Don't spare him. He has done the worst possible thing, the worst possible violation of dharma this fellow has committed. So just chop his head off. And you also promised Draupadi that you will do this. Now do it. So then Arjuna thinks, he says, no, I want to take him to Draupadi and ask her what she wants to be done. So he takes, Krishna says, fine. So he goes and he carries him like a sack and dumps him in front of Draupadi. And he says, I've brought him here. Now look at him. So immediately Draupadi, when she sees that fellow bound and lying there, and his head is in shame, he's totally in shame. He knows he has done something very wrong, absolutely wrong, and he doesn't know what to do. So he's just lying there, and seeing that, everybody, Arjuna also, Draupadi's heart becomes very soft. She's like, what is this? What are we doing now? He has done wrong, there's no doubt, but what are we doing? This is the son of our guru. And it's only through this guru that we have learned everything. And how can we see this? This is a Brahmana. We are Kshatriyas. This is a Brahmana who's lying there on the floor. And he's tied up. Look at his face, how miserable he looks. So we can't do this. We can't kill him. We have no, so see, she feels very, very bad. She feels extremely bad. Her heart is very soft. Okay, that's the heart of a bhakta. There's no anger. She's very, very, she says, we can't do this to him. And she also says, just like me, his mother is also like me only. Her husband was killed some time back. And now the only thing she has in her life is this person who is a replacement. And the only substitute for her husband is her son. Son is also, like, in some sense, a part of the husband only. So if you kill the son also, then she will have nobody in her life. And how miserable that will be. I am suffering because my sons have gone. I don't want her to suffer like that. Okay, so see her thinking how great it is, right? So she says, no, we can't do this to him. So then they all look at Bhagavan and say, what should we do now? In the middle, Bhima comes. And Bhima is also furious. Bhima is extremely furious. He was very furious even earlier on many occasions. So he says, no, we cannot do this. He tells Draupadi that he has committed the worst offense. This fellow has to be killed right now. He has to be given the mrityu danda right now. There's nothing, no sparing him. Okay, so then this debate between them, then they all look at Bhagavan and ask him, what should you do? So he says, see, now he looks at Arjuna. He says, see, there's now a dilemma. The Shastra says two things. One is, it says that Atatai. Atatai means a person who is a aggressor, a person who comes and burns your house or who steals your spouse and goes away. Okay, the Muslims read all of these things. So they are Atatai. There are 6 things which are listed in that shloka. I don't have that shloka right now with me. But in those 6 things, it includes things like this: burning the house, killing somebody who's sleeping, etc., etc. So an Atatai must be dealt only by killing. There's one Shastric injunction which says that. And then there's also an injunction which says that a Brahmana should not be killed, especially if he's your Guru's son. Okay, there are injunctions like that also. So now, the problem now is Arjuna has made a promise to Draupadi also that I will chop off his head. And that has also not been done. So what should be done? You're caught up. So here he looks at Arjuna and he says, now you reconcile. You sort it out and do whatever you think is the most appropriate. So Arjuna comes to the task. He applies his knowledge. He's very, very intelligent, Arjuna. So he comes forward and says, I will handle it. So he chops off his head, chops off his hair, sorry, not head. He shaves him, completely shaves him. And there's a jewel on his forehead. A jewel is the source of a lot of strength for Ashwatthama. His tejas, his Shakti comes from that jewel. So he plucks off that jewel. And then he unbinds him and he says, get out of here. He throws him out. He dispatches him. He says, get out and don't come back. Get out from here. So he goes out. So now it is said in the Shastra that for a Brahmana, the way to kill a Brahmana is this. The 3 things which kill a Brahmana. One is you shave off his head without his consent. The second is you disrobe him of his wealth, whatever wealth he has. So you steal his money, not steal, you snatch away his money by saying, you don't deserve this, you take it away. And the third is, you ask him to get out from the room. Okay, you say, get lost. You never treat a Brahmana like that normally, right? But if you treat a Brahmana like that, it's as good as killing him. So three things I said are equivalent to giving Mrityu Danda to a Brahmana. And Arjuna revives his Shastra and he does this. And now then everybody is happy. They said, yes, we didn't have to remove him, we didn't have to kill him in the sense of murdering him, but we've done something equivalent to that and we have sent him out. So this beautiful story illustrates the many things, multiple things. Like one is how going against Shastra is Maha Aparadh. And the second is how Shastra is used to deal with such situations, like the way Arjuna deals with him. And of course, the heart of Draupadi and Arjuna and the other Pandavas who are just watching this, the soft nature of a person who is in knowledge, in bhakti. Okay, all of this comes out. It's very beautiful. Yes.
So I think he was given the curse of like being alive in the last day of the world,
Yeah.
but he will suffer every day.
Hmm.
So some sort of thing also I remember. I'm not exactly sure about it.
Maybe in the Mahabharata it is there. In the Bhagavata, that curse is not there. Yeah. In fact, in the Bhagavata, immediately after this, what he does is he goes away, and as he is going away, he dispatches one more Brahmastra to kill the 5 Pandavas who are alive, because that's what his original intention was. He wanted to kill the Pandavas, but he ended up killing their sons. So he dispatches a Brahmastra because he wants to put an end to the Pandava dynasty completely. And now these people are still alive, so they can still beget children. On top of that, Abhimanyu's son is still alive in the womb of Uttara. He's not yet born, Parikshit, but he is sitting in the womb of the wife of Abhimanyu. The name is Uttara. So what happens in the Bhagavatam, immediately after this story is given to us, the next story is Uttara comes running to Krishna. They're all there, they're all performing the Antyakriya of all the people who have died on their side. And just as they finish doing the Antyakriya, Uttara comes running to Krishna and says, Krishna, please help me, please protect me. There's one very fearsome looking weapon which is coming towards me. And it's going to, it's targeting my baby. So please, even if I get killed, it's okay, but please let my baby live so that the dynasty will continue. And the Pandavas, they see the things. The Pandavas also turn to Krishna and say they raise their weapons and they are ready for that weapon to come instinctively because they are Kshatriyas. And so what Sri Bhagavan does is he immediately, he sees that Brahmastra coming. And so this is sent by Ashwatthama, the same Ashwatthama. And so he invokes the Sudarshan Chakra. And the Sudarshan goes and he finishes off that Brahmastra. And in fact, it is also said in the Bhagavatam in another place how that a part of that Brahmastra entered the womb of Uttara. And it started, it went very close to Parikshit. And the Sudarshan Chakra, the Bhagavan took a form and he also entered the womb and he wanted to play with that for some time. So Parikshit in the womb, he is conscious by that time. He has attained consciousness. So he sees one huge ball of fire around him. He's wondering what is that fire. And he sees one very beautiful person also moving around with that fire. And it seems like that person and that fire are playing with each other. And then that person extinguishes that fire and vanishes away. He sees a very beautiful, beautiful person who's moving around, who's flying around him. And then that person extinguishes that burning fire and goes away. So Parikshit sees all this in the womb as a conscious baby. So after coming out, after being born, after coming out of the womb, he's trying to find out that memory, that image that he saw, that memory remains with him. He's not able to forget because it's so beautiful, such a beautiful thing. What was that? Where did it come from? What happened actually? He doesn't know. So he goes around searching. And that's one reason why that name Parikshit comes to him. He's doing pariksha to find out who is that person? He said, this person I saw. Who did I see? Who was that person? He's trying to find out. Later on, of course, he learns what happened. So the story of Ashwatthama's crooked nature continues even after that punishment that he got.
Out of those like who are still alive, 7 people,
He is
the
one of them. Yes.
unfortunate person who is like living through sorrow only.
Who are the other 6? Do you know? Vyasa is one of them.
Aswastama, Bali, Vyasa, Hanuman, Vibhishana, and I'm forgetting the last two. Yes. Bali. Not
Bali you said.
Bali. Aswastama, Bali, Vyasa, Vibhishana, Hanuman ji. ये हो गए 5 और 2 sorry. So the Bali, the dwarf, because he is
That Bali is, yeah, he is in Sutala. He is in Sutala, yes.
He's going to the next Indra.
Indra, yeah. In the next Manvantara. In the next Manvantara. Yes.
Yeah, these are the 7.
Yes. Some of them are in the Himalayas, like he is in the Himalaya. Vyasa is in the Himalaya.
I'm not exactly sure, but during the Ratha Yatra, in a particular day, black colored like flower, it's seen like on Jagannath Ji. During the release on the chariot only.
Okay.
So that is believed that Vibhishana comes and offer that flower. I'm not exactly sure that that's what I have heard during my childhood days.
Oh.
I'm not sure actually.
Okay. Om Shanno Mitrasham Varunaha Shanno Bhavatvaryama Shanna Indro Brihaspatihi Shanno Vishnurukramaha Namo Brahmane Namaste Vayo Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmavadisham Ritamavadisham Satyamavadisham Tanmamavit Tadvaktaramavit Avinmam Avid Vaktaram Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat